At some point in time, you may have asked yourself, as you were watching these videos, what's the deal with those numbers? Well, there's a simple explanation for that, so let's get into it. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to sort of answer a question with a question and ask you the question if you have ever cooked anything. Have you ever cooked anything? And boiling water doesn't count, making toast doesn't count, making Pop-Tarts doesn't count. I mean, we're talking like you actually have to get stuff out of the cupboard, boxes of things, and mix them together in, say, a bowl, and then put them into, let's say, an oven where stuff happens, and you make stuff. If you've ever made anything, cooked anything, you need a couple of items. First off, you need a recipe. You need directions to show you what ingredients, and the ingredients and showing exactly in what quantities. So, I mean, I could put 4 pounds of flour in my cookie recipe with only like a tablespoon of butter, but I doubt any of you are going to want to eat them. So knowing the ratios of putting the ingredients together becomes an incredibly important part of the process. Now, in this case, chemical reactions are exactly the same way. And when I mean exactly the same way, it's pretty much the same way. Now, there's a slight difference. Now, you do, however, need a recipe. Now, how the quantities are measured is a little different. But you need a recipe. And that recipe, you've probably already seen. It's called a chemical reaction equation. Yeah, you want to go home and be impressive? Go memorize that. Tell it to your parents. If your parents aren't impressed, I guess the dog will always be impressed by you. Here's our chemical reaction equation. And this is an example of a complete chemical recipe. So, I guess the question now is, what are these numbers doing here? What are they? What do they represent? Well, I can tell you this, that in cooking, you measure ingredients by things like ounces or cups or teaspoons or, say you have a half cup of something or a teaspoon or a tablespoon. You have certain measuring quantities when you're going to cook. Now, with chemistry, as oddly complex as this seems, everything is measured using one thing, and that's moles. And we're not talking about this is going to be horrible, the furry little rodent thing that lives under the ground, and it's like, hey, what's up? Because I'm digging up your rose petals and your stuff, and so he digs underground, makes a big giant mess, like holes and stuff. Okay, not that kind of mole. And it's not the same kind of mole that grows on like Uncle Bob's back, and there's a big old giant hair that grows off of it. You could like fly fish with it because it's so big. Not that kind of mole. The kind of mole we're talking about is, well, it's kind of like, it's a number, it's a set. You can think of it as like a set, a chemical set. And it's a set number of things, just like a pair. How much would a pair be? Like a pair represents a number. So how much would it be? Be like 2, right? Okay. So, and a dozen. A dozen is a word that represents a set of what? Well, it represents a set of 12. Now, I don't know, most people don't know what this is. This is an old term. It's like elementary school teachers still use it because they order pencils by this quantity. But a gross is a set of 144. Now, the mole is just like that. It's a set number. And so whenever you see, things like 7 H2Os, that means that we have 7 moles of water. So what is the mole? What is the number for the mole? Well, I could tell you, but I don't want to scare you because it's freaking huge. All right, I'll show you. Now, okay, so that's 12, right? So if you have a mole of water, so if we had 1 mole of water, that 1 mole would equal 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd power. And that's molecules of water. So that set, that number of water molecules makes a mole. And it's always that number. Always that number. Now that has a name. It's called Avogadro's number, but we'll get more into about that later. I just thought I'd throw it in case you were interested, like you were playing Trivial Pursuit, and all of a sudden somebody's like, name the number that's 6.02 times 10 to the 23. You're like, oh, I totally got that. It's Avogadro's number. So just in case, because that might happen. Okay, so a mole is a set number of things, and inside of these equations, they're used to tell you how much needs to get mixed together. Pretty simple? Okay, well, I thought so. If you have any other questions, ask the director. That would be me.